Okay. So, investigation. I wrote some notes, so let me just bring up my notes here to share some of these ideas with you. On Monday, Catherine was talking about the importance of investigation in the Buddhist teachings and how it's weaved into the spirit of the Buddhist teaching style. Ehipasiko. Come and experience these teachings for yourself. And if we look at the Buddhist path, we find that investigation is really important. It's about getting to know things so that ultimately we can find the way to right understanding, to understanding the reality of life. Investigation is very encouraged and recommended in the Buddhist path. It is what leads to understanding. In Pali, this quality of investigation is called Dhamma Vichaya, investigation of phenomena or reality, and it involves a pulling apart to see more deeply what's going on. It's about unpacking and discerning what an experience is made up of. And it doesn't mean overanalyzing in a dry way, but it's about engaging with an experience with curiosity and with courage to find out what's going on there. Mindful inquiry looks beneath the surface to find out what's really going on. Now, those of us that are therapists or have been in therapy know about this quality of investigation, which is commonly practiced in mindful, cognitive, and somatic psychology. As a therapist and as a client in therapy, I've experienced multiple times that curious, caring inquiry or investigation leads to useful insights, to self-understanding, and to making beneficial mental and behavioral changes. It's not always easy. We need some courage sometimes to investigate more deeply. As a therapist, I often teach my clients about RAIN. You may have heard about this already. It's an acronym coined by Michelle McDonald and that was made popular by Buddhist psychologist Tara Brach. The steps in RAIN, which I will talk about later, can help us to be more mindful, more curious, insightful, and compassionate towards ourselves and others when we need to investigate something more deeply. But first, let's talk a little bit more about investigation. So why investigate in the first place? Well, it can lead us to understand how our mind is working, how mind and body are connected, to know what's really going on with us, to investigate and become curious and conscious of both the skillful and the unskillful patterns of thought and behavior that we may engage in out of habit. It promotes right understanding and right view. Ultimately, we investigate to reduce the causes of suffering and to augment peace. Deeper investigation can lead us to tap into the nature of reality and the truths that the Buddha talked about. Bringing it into like a more personal example, investigation is what curiously and non-judgmentally will ask of a felt experience. What is this? Where am I feeling it in my body? And where am I and where was I right before this all started? It's curious. I'll talk a little bit more about investigation when we get to RAIN. But we notice that when we slow down to get curious about our trains of thought, our feelings, about the sequence of events in our minds and bodies, we begin to see that every thought and sensation isn't just happening. Everything is connected, and whatever thought or feeling we're having depends on something that happened before. But we can always pause, reassess the situation, and change the course. So investigation as a factor of awakening is a mental quality that leads to discernment and wisdom. When approached from a Buddhist perspective, it supports insight into the three characteristics of reality: impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and non-self. That is why often, if not always, we come to the conclusion that all thoughts and feelings are impermanent. Things are coming and going. We have a natural tendency to like and dislike phenomena. And we want to cling to what we like, and we want to push away or ignore what we don't like. That's just human nature. And we learn that the more entangled we get into a sense of me or I, the more tense we get, and the more likely we are to experience stress. So before we're able to investigate something, we need to recognize it. That's why mindfulness comes first as a factor of awakening. We need to know what's going on, to recognize. And sometimes we need something strong to be happening in order to recognize it, to feel that experience. Now, most of us have no problem with when it comes to feeling joy, gratitude, which are common experiences. Usually the strongest experiences are anger, gratitude, fear, sadness, and joy. But we're pleasure-driven beings who want to experience the pleasant. However, it is important to explore the unpleasant too. For today, I first thought that I would be talking about the importance of investigating well-being. But as I tried to finish up this talk, I realized I was bypassing something because I have been experiencing fear lately. So I thought, well, let me start with fear. So today I want to talk a little bit more about fear. It is a very common universal experience. Fear is necessary. It is here to protect us, to keep us alive. It can teach us something always. And it can be an emotion that can easily snowball into something paralyzes that just stops us from wanting to investigate, from accessing wisdom, and from taking right action. Now, when fear arises and we want to investigate it mindfully, the first step is to meet it at the door with curiosity. Fear of the future shows up for all of us. In fact, fear happens in relation to the future. It may be realistic or it may be an exaggeration. Fear might look like anxiety about health, uncertainty around money, worry for the people we love. Oftentimes, it's somewhere in between real and imagined. Now, I'll share a personal example. It started this year in January, and I noticed that a certain fear keeps creeping into my field of awareness that is based in certain truths. I'm beginning to feel tense every time I even think about it, and I'll share this fear openly. Although I am a naturalized U.S. citizen, every time I hear something on the news about a Hispanic U.S. citizen being unfairly deported, I clench. Because I walk in the world as a Hispanic brown woman. At first, when I hear news like this, I feel a degree of empathy and sorrow for the person that was unfairly deported and separated from their loved ones. But then I become self-referential. Right after hearing something, we usually, what about me? What if I get stopped by a government agent simply for being a brown Hispanic woman with a little accent? What if I get deported and sent back to Colombia, where I used to live 30 years ago, and get separated from my family? Now, this is a new fear, something I had never experienced in the 30 years I've been living in this amazing country. And I'll have to befriend this fear. So to ease my mind, after investigating this fear, I decided that I'm always carrying my passport card whenever I leave my house, and I say a little prayer to feel protected and ultimately trust karma. I've also explored this fear with mindful investigation and have developed a plan with my family. So I'm not here to deny any fear. All of you may have your own fears. Maybe as a result of the current state of the world or the result of very personal causes and conditions. So my invitation for you today is to investigate fear. And hopefully the takeaway will be the simple practice of RAIN. So I'm going to talk about RAIN now to close the talk. RAIN, for those of you that haven't heard the acronym or as a reminder, consists of 4 words. The R is to recognize, and that is connected to mindfulness, to recognize in what is there. A is to accept, non-judgmentally, to welcome what's happening. I is about investigation, our topic for the week. It's when we really get in there from a non-self-referential point of view to investigate what's going on with curiosity, with the intention of alleviating suffering, our own suffering or other people's suffering. And then nurturing is the right action that follows that investigation. So let's imagine that this is a tip for when this happens for you. Let's imagine you're in your room just organizing things, and then suddenly, boom, a thought of fear arises. The thing to do is to stop. You feel it in your chest, in your breath, in your thoughts. The first thing is to stop, to breathe, and to name it. Ah, fear is here. Hello, fear. Like the Buddha said, hello, Mara. I see you, Mara. Those things that want to take our joy away. I see fear. And then get curious, where am I feeling it in the body and in the mind? Is my jaw clenching? What's really going on? So you feel it, you breathe, and that's the first step, to recognize it. Then you accept it. You welcome it. You say, this is what's going on here. I'm not going to deny it. This is the visitor that has just come into this guest house. And then you enter a mindful, curious mindset. You accept that this is the experience. This is what's going on. There's no denying and no judgment. And then you get really curious. This is when you need to access that mindful perspective that Susan talks about. Non-self-referential, beneficial, and caring. You imagine you're your own best friend, full of wisdom, ready to investigate that fear. If that's hard, you can think Bill and Susan are there with you. Or your teacher, whoever they are, or someone who loves you and knows you and is so wise. And from that point of view, you get into the investigative part. So in the investigation, once you identify a fear, like my fear of what if I get deported, right? We think, is this something that has ever happened? Is this a fear that something may happen? Is this based on some sort of fact, or is just a random thought that took over? And we can slow down. Now, probably because of my treating as a therapist, I do get a little bit more analytical in this part, and I find it helpful because it's to get at the root of some of these thoughts. Am I exaggerating? Is this real? Are there any other alternate thoughts? But even before thinking about alternate thoughts, it's just about getting to know all the messages that is happening. So some good questions that I want to leave you with are, what is happening in the body? What is this belief driving? Is this fear protecting me or keeping me stuck? What part is helpful and what part is an exaggeration? And it's not about controlling it, it's about understanding it, relating it, and then questioning some things. And so you become like a kind scientist inside your own inner world, curious and non-judgmental. And when you realize, well, there is some truth, then you can prepare. You can get ready and think about the many things that you have already overcome. Now, as a result of investigating, you may need that. You may need to plan something. You may need to talk to someone. You may need a break. So this is where the final step comes in. N, to nurture. What do I need to nurture myself? To practice compassion. To talk to a Kalyanamita, to a Sangha member, to a good person. Maybe even to go to therapy or coaching or spiritual advice. Or do I just need to walk in the park and shake it loose? Whatever it is, that is what will nurture you. And that is how we bring compassion. So I want to thank you for listening. I know it was a lot in there, but I hope that you can just get curious about your fears and start befriending them and getting to know them. Next time fear arises, pause, take a breath, and practice RAIN. You've got this. We've all got this. We can do it. We have amazing tools.